What is up, guys? Essie and Scrappy here in a very different venue, and you'll hear not only the sounds of skaters and hockey behind us, but we're here with a live audience here this week. First off, before we get into this, I think a big point that we have to say, thank you to the entire Wrestlers in Business crew for putting this all together. Specific shout out to Rocky Kaufman for giving me the phone call that actually kind of got the wheels turning on this.
If he only knew that he was going to give a live microphone to Lucas Da Silva.
It's a really interesting life choice, for sure.
It really is. We'll see how it works out.
It could hurt me more than anybody, but
no
beyond
doubt.
that, secondarily, thank you to our fans that watch the show every week, basically. Appreciate y'all kind of helping us get through to have the platform to do this. And thirdly, there's a good number of recognizable faces for not only Georgia wrestling, but the Southeast here today, or the country, as with a couple people flanking us behind the camera that you might hear from throughout the show. Thank you to everybody that watches our show. Jason, why don't you take a second and kind of actually explain to everybody what we're doing today? What non-controversial topic we're touching on today?
Yeah, so top 25 in the state of Georgia. That is probably really a stupid endeavor, right? I mean, because there are so many different opinions, so many different things. How do you compare a 1962 Briarcliff team to a 2001 Pope team or whoever? So we tried to use a lot of data to help us understand who was the best, right? And so we're going to call out a bunch of numbers. We're going to not necessarily do a countdown necessarily. We're going to kind of go back and forth, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting.
For sure. I mean, for me, I told you this in the run-up. I basically had to make 3 separate lists with different criteria for each. Because, I mean, first off, you got to state with 37 classifications.
Right.
Over 60 years, basically, of the state tournament. Lots of different power swings and who was a dominant force through different eras. Even in certain schools, I think another big note, only 1 representation per school.
Right. That actually was really important.
I think that's a big thing to mention
because you
here.
could put Camden 2017, Camden 2018, or whatever.
Yeah, you can do that, especially when you get these teams that, in the state of Georgia, it's very rare you get a team that's super dominant for 1 season. Typically, like most of the country, you'll see teams over periods of time be dominant. So it also kind of makes...
So we're only picking 1.
Yes.
1 year. So sometimes that was the most difficult part.
That's what I was going to go to, is it added another level of challenge for me in certain cases, like what's the difference between a 2017 Camden and a 2018 Camden? Right. So that I think added another level of this. That in total for me it was about 35 teams that were fluctuating in and out of the list.
Agreed. All right, so let's start with 4 teams that didn't make my list but made your list.
Okay.
And we're going to actually show these on cards, and as we go through this, and for our live audience, just so you know, this will actually come up and we'll post a graphic, not actually showing cards necessarily.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
So for me, the first team that wasn't on yours, that is on mine, they come in at number 24 for me, the 2020 Creekview team. They finished 3rd in duels. They won a traditional state championship, 4 champions, 8 placers in total. They scored 195.5 points in 6A. 2020 was a weird year in 6A. A lot of teams were in the mix. This was a Buford team in the mix, an Alexander team. South Paulding was in the mix. What I think led to me putting him on this list was just the simple matter of fact that there were so many teams that were competitive in that season.
Yeah, and also you should know, Lucas didn't pick any teams before he was born. So, I mean, it's all going to be 2000s, okay? All right?
That's wrong. That's objectively wrong. We'll get there when we get there. I got one that was before my mother was born. So, I mean, before she...
One!
Yeah, one. Yeah,
only
one.
1 out of 25.
Yeah, it's tough for me to pick guys that were wearing spandex that are tied way down their leg in certain instances.
Go.
Nah, moving on. Before this one gets me tight, before we even get into the top 10, ladies and gentlemen. Second team that wasn't in his list that is in mine, they come in at number 23 for me, the 2007 West Lawrence Cavaliers. They scored 231.5 points within 3A, 3rd in duels, 1st in traditional, 6 champions, 8 placers.
I got a question for you. How do you pick a team that didn't win duels as a top 25 team. They were third in their classification in a particular year.
I looked at on the whole of the year and who they wrestled. What happened was in that 3A year, there were a lot of really good teams. You look, this was still North Hall was in the mix, Troop in the mix still around this era. There were a lot of good. Who you wrestled matters a lot for me. We'll get there when we get there as we go on.
Sure.
If you're beating high-level competition, for me, it meant more to me than in certain instances beating competition that you could argue wasn't as high.
All right.
That was the big thing for me, especially with this West Lawrence team. They were one of the teams that, like I said, I had 35 teams in and out of the lineup. They were one of the teams that, within certain criteria, they would have probably fallen in my outside looking in.
Next.
Move on. We go to spot number 22, 2021 Sonarville. 2 champions, 7 placers. They scored 197 points. They were second in traditional, 4th in duels. Again, the question becomes, how do I pick them without winning a state title? When we get there, who they lost to matters.
Okay, but they took second in traditional
Correct.
and 4th in duels, and they make your top 25.
Yep.
Okay.
Because they lost it. Already got one from Rocky Kaufman, ladies and gentlemen. I'm keeping note of who boos.
All right, next.
So the last team that's on my list and not on yours, we go up a couple of spots. Number 19, 2008 Cass. They scored 212 points in the traditional tournament. 2 champions, 7th placers, traditional runners-up, dual co-champions, which is a bit of an interesting
Yeah,
one
so
there.
I don't know if anybody in the audience, they had 2 instances where there were co-champions.
Ties and dual meets?
Ties and, I guess. I don't know. Does anybody know in the audience?
We got a couple of referees that were out there. Yeah.
That's why I kind of looked over to our...
And how did we come up? Because was there no criteria?
That's an example.
Yeah,
You don't know.
Simpson, Gordon Lee, they tied.
Yeah, there were a couple instances where there were co-champions, and I don't know how there were
For
co-champions.
that one is because the GHSA decided after the fact because it was a
To give
appeal
Gordon Lee
thing.
the trophy also.
Wasn't there a snow out 1 year too?
Well, if GHSA made the decision, we know it was the wrong decision. So beyond that, so now I think this gives us the opportunity, since I had 4 teams that didn't make your list, you're going to have 4 teams that didn't make mine. So why don't you run down those 4 teams for us, Jason?
All right, and mine are, not surprisingly, not necessarily in the 2000s. My first team is the 1978 Hateville team, 177 points, 6 champions, 2 runners-up, 9 placers, traditional champions. Hateville, if you didn't know, in the 1970s, very, 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 very good program, and they come in at number 23 for me.
Yep.
Number 14 team, which is crazy considering it didn't even make your list.
This one I missed.
All right,
This one I
5
missed.
champions, 2 runners-up. Chattooga from 2020, they had 73 more points than everyone else, 190 and a half points to win the 2A state title in 2020.
Yeah, that one I missed.
All right, number 18 team, 11 placers. 11 placers out of 14 placers. 6 champions, 2 runners-up, 224 points. 224 points in 1981. Armucci, right? They scored 24% of the points and top 10 points in 1981.
Yep.
And number 25 for me was the 1977 Palmetto team. 167 points, 9 placers, 5 champions, 3 runners-up, 26 points ahead, 20%. So those are 4 our teams.
Makes sense that you would pick them, being that that's probably about 15 years into your coaching career around that point,
Yeah,
right?
about there. Yeah. All right, so let's move to teams that we had the same, that we picked the same, but different years.
Yep.
All right, and we're gonna hark back to Briarcliff
Yeah.
in the 1960s. You picked 1963.
Yep.
I picked 1962. Do we have in the audience? Is one of the 2 of us right?
67 was the best team.
67 was the best team.
5 champions and 2 seconds and a third.
All right.
So the reason I picked 63 for me was, and this is where I'm going to be honest, a lot of my list, while the numbers were important, I also went a lot off. I tested who was on those teams. I went back to the Wayback Machine, ladies and gentlemen, to find brackets for some of these teams. The 63 team is the first team to score 100 points at the state tournament. Not only that, I think it takes, it takes a couple years for it to happen again, which was a big point for me, was the fact that They were so dominant. They scored 100 points at the tournament, and they were the first team to ever do so.
They were the second team because the 1962 Briarcliff team
Yes,
was
you're
the
right.
first team to score over 100 points.
Yes. I said the wrong
1962 team was were first team to score over 100 points
Yes.
at the state tournament.
They come in at number 25 on my list, that Briarcliff team.
And for me, 4 champions, 4 runners-up, 23% of the points that year. They are number 15 for me. Briarcliff's 1962 team is number 15 for me. All right, let's move to Morgan County.
Yep.
And just so everybody knows, I reached out to University of Northern Iowa's assistant coach, Lee Roper, who wrestled on that team, and because we had a differing of opinions on which year. You picked?
I picked their 2000 team, 10 placers in total, 2 champions, 213 team points. They were the 2000 traditional champions. They scored 21% of the points that are scored.
So, and my number 24 team was actually the 2001 team, which is the team that Lee Roper picked, right? So 2001, traditional champs, 5 champs, 2 runners-up on that team. Lee was on both those teams. He wrestled on both of those teams. It was his opinion that he thought the 2001 team was the better of the 2 teams. All right, so let's move to Bremen.
Bremen, yeah.
All right, who do you got?
Bremen for me, I went with their 2010 team. They're all the way at number 12 on my list. 255.5 points, 4 champions, 11 placers, another 4 runners-up, traditional champions and dual champions. The only thing that did kind of hold them back a little bit for me, and we'll kind of get into this argument as we go on, is being in 1A in 2010.
He hates 1A, by the way.
I think 1A is the 4th best class in the state this year. Like, what are you talking about? I get hate for how much I love Pisgah and Social Circle, right? That's of course what people think when I say Social Circle.
All right,
and
so,
Pisgah.
so I picked the 2009 Bremen team, had 5 champs, 1 runner-up, 176.5 points. They had 38.5 points ahead of the competition. The thing that's interesting is I reached out to Coach Armas, and he said we're both wrong. All right?
Of course they did.
And he said, I believe the 2004 team had 7 state titles on that team. They didn't all win that year.
Yeah.
Okay, they won in the years after that. They put 8 in the state finals, and those kids over time, if you were to look back in hindsight, they were the team that
For sure,
had a powerful
For sure,
team.
a good team. I think the big point for me was when I was looking at these brackets, I really kind of looked at it as one season. The teams in that season. So they had 7 champs on that team, but if they didn't all win in that year, not to say it didn't help them as much as that you might assume. For
Okay.
sure. For sure, that season's results mattered to me most.
All right, so we now turn to McEachern, and they during the 90s and 2000s, man, one of the best programs around.
You can make a case that their era of dominance is one of the first real major footnotes in Georgia wrestling history, with the guys that came through McEachern and the level of dominance that they did have.
Agreed. So what year did you pick?
Down at number 20 for me is their 2003 team, 3 champions, a runner-up, 8 placers in total, 224 points. They were traditional and dual champions in that season, and what would have been 4?
4A.
Yeah, I believe it would have been 4A.
4A? I think so. All right. My team
Less than 7,
is
I know that.
in 19. Yeah, it was less than 7.
And again, anything's less than
1991
7.
team comes in at number 19, 217 points, 4 champs, 1 runner-up, 9 placers. They were the traditional champs, had 23% of the top 10 points. And, Coach, you disagreed with both of us.
I did. Sorry, but I appreciate the recognition on both those teams. I didn't coach in the 2003 team, but the 91 team did.
And what is the year that you picked?
I was going to
I
ask.
would go with 92 or 95.
92 or 95, and why? Why those over others?
The 92 team broke the records for points scored, placers. That record stood for probably 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And The 95 team had 4 All-Americans on it. And,
So I hate to put you on the spot, Coach, but 91 or 2003?
well, I coached the 91 team.
So there we go. Woo! That's what I'm saying.
My son was on the 3, but I'll pick the 91.
Can I throw a question to the coach every time?
Absolutely.
What was the highest national ranking that you had?
We were in the top 15, I think, at one point.
Do you know what year that was?
No, I can't remember the year. We did get named top program for a decade, top 25 programs in a decade.
I know I saw y'all in that top, I want to say 13, 14, somewhere in that range. Because, like I said, I went and did way too deep of a dive on this for a while, so yeah.
Yeah, if his schoolwork suffers as a result, we're sorry to Emmanuel.
My fault, Killian.
All right. All right, let's move to Troop.
Yep.
Because if McEachern's a program that you think of, Troop is also a program that you think of quite a bit.
And not only that, but
Moved up before, eh?
dominance in a couple different eras. You know, they had teams in the 70s and 80s that won, but then we see a team in the early 2000s that was dominant. And if not more on brand than anything else, you went with the older team, I went with the younger team. So why don't you give us first who you went with?
Okay, all right. I went with the 1979 Troop squad. 146 points, 4 champs, 1 runner-up, 7 placers. And, you know, individuals shouldn't play a role in how you pick a team no, I'm talking about a single individual. Okay. But that team had 3-time state champ Charlie Hurt on. So that was, if you look back, and yes, I did know the Troop that time frame, but that team was very, very good.
I can't disagree with you. That Troop team was also, it really came down to your pick of 79, and then my pick, the 2001 Troop team, scored 236 points, 3 champions, 2 more runners-up, 8 placers in total. They come in at number 18 for me. While I can't necessarily disagree with the argument of Hurt, I think the more complete team in a more, let's say, complete era competition.
Complete era of competition?
Yeah.
So you're saying wrestling's better today than it was then?
Yes. I don't know why that's a discussion. I don't know why, like, see, I'm going to get called an ageist for saying this, and I really don't care. I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that the sport has evolved. We have to.
100%.
I think it's disingenuous.
100%. But if you look back, like, so Dick Butkus, who just recently passed away, wrestler, right?
Got arrested. Yeah.
Okay. Even though he played during a different time, he was dominant.
Yes, and there are outliers, and there are, of course, exceptions to the rule. But that doesn't mean that the rule doesn't exist. Especially...
Well, it's your rule. You made the rule.
I don't make the rule. I just understand the rule. I don't make it.
All right, moving on, because we got to make sure we.
And we're gonna end up getting back to this argument again later.
Gilmer.
Yep.
Gilmer is our next program. You picked a different year than me. What year did you pick?
I picked the 2008 Gilmer team. It's again a trend that we see where, so they win in traditional, they finish 3rd in duels. I can't remember who they lost to in duels. I want to say Jefferson. Could be mistaken.
I don't know.
I could be mistaken, but someone's gonna fact check me on that. Columbus. Thank you. 2 champions, 5 placers, 226 points scored at the state tournament. Big thing for me with them was a complete lineup. They brought all 14 to the state tournament while they didn't place all of them. They brought all of them to the dance. That was big for me, and that's how they ended up getting on the number 14 spot in my list.
All right, so the number 16 spot on my list is the 2015 Gilmer squad. 220.5 points, 4 champs, 4 runners-up, 2 3-timers. Matthew Waddell and Levi Seabold at the top of that. 2 2-timers, Marcelino Lopez and Lucas Patterson were on that. Marcelino Lopez moved to Murray County for his senior year. And a 1-time state champ. So
a very good team, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both these teams super. I mean, Gilmer's another one of those programs that we could look back to of, you say Gilmer, we could talk about state titles and always being in the hunt for a state title.
Early 2000s Parkview.
I can make the case that before before Collins Hill, when it came to the biggest classifications, Parkview might have had the most dominant run of any team ever.
All right. So who do you have?
So for me, coming in at my number 15 spot is the 2004 Archer team, 8th place,
Archer?
or Parkview, excuse me. I don't know, I'm 40, is that my fault? Parkview, 5A champions in both duals and traditional. This is the note that was important for me. 2 champions. They win the biggest classification with 2 champions. 8th place is 239 points in a very competitive 5A. They only won the state tournament by 14.5 points. Again, competition matters to me. That was again a note that played into me picking that 04 Parkview team.
So I picked the 06 Parkview team, which wasn't terribly different than the 04 team. It comes in at number 22 for me, 215.5 points, 4 champs, 2 runners-up. The thing that stood out to me about that 2006 Parkview team was that in the first 6 weight classes, they had 4 champs, 5 finalists. So they were super talented down low. That was going to be a gauntlet to run through to get to that point.
Absolutely.
Is that wrong? Is that wrong?
06, there were 3 nationally ranked guys on that team.
3 nationally ranked guys on that team. There you go.
Shout out Khalil for the extra bit of information there.
Awesome. So would you take the 04 or the 06?
Go 06.
Didn't you wrestle
I
on
think
that
it's
06 team?
0 for 4 now.
Wait, that's the team you wrestled on, wasn't it?
Nah, dude, I'm not that old.
All right, let's move to Pisgah.
Yes,
We picked the same year for Pisgah,
we did.
right? And remember putting this in order. Yeah.
Putting this in order, you're going to want to fight him and not me on this one. I want to say that.
That is
make
true.
that clear.
So you put Pisgah, which year and where do you put him?
The 2021 Pisgah team, for me, comes in number 9 all time.
Yeah.
You can't tell Coach Mary in the back. 4 champions, 9 placers, 256 points. They win the state tournament by 51 points. You look at that team, Noble, Burt, the names that went through that era of Pisgah. This is the first time that they were all kind of together in one year, and they produced a state title. Underdogs the entire season. My first year picking brackets. Not only did I get it wrong, I was getting Instagram calls during the state duels tournament because I picked against them. So shout out to Noble and them for that. But yeah, for me, that team deserves a lot more credit than a lot of people, Jason Fulmore, will tend to give them credit for. So now I'll let you, with your flagrant disrespect, I'll let you go.
Well, they made the top 25. They just
where
come in
did
at
you put
number
them?
21, right? And the thing that was great about the Pisgah squad is that this is a squad that had some really talented individuals on it, multiple time state champions and so on and so forth. But the thing that, if you were around during that time, they came together as a team. They wrestled as a team. They really seemed to care for one another and everything else, and that was just super cool.
Yeah, especially like just the whole kind of scenario that played into it going into the postseason. A real kind of underdog story, so it was super cool.
Dublin.
Yep.
Who you got? What year?
I have the 2004 Dublin 3A state champions in both duals and traditional. 5 champs, 9 placers, 248.5 points. They win the state tournament by 83.5 points. That's 23% of the points scored in the top 10. They come in number 13 on my list.
Yeah, and Dublin for me comes in at number 9. I remember the Dublin squad with Whit Durden on the team. This was not that squad. He was after that. He was before that time. But a lot of really talented individuals. 248.5 points, pretty impressive. 83.5 points ahead of second. That is a pretty dominant run by Dublin.
Yep.
Our next team is Rockmart from last year.
Yep.
2023. I have, and that gets some groans from the audience.
Oh, then what I have is really going to make someone mad.
I have them at number 12. They had 244.5 points, 6 champs, 2 runners-up. The thing that's most impressive about them is they dominated their classification. 24% of the top 10 points came from that squad. 6
champions, 11 places in total. I have them number 7. They made it my top 10.
Yep.
I at least had you in the top 10 too. I don't want to hear it.
All right, Social Circle.
Social Circle, 2016 Social Circle at that. 6 champions, 11 placers, 235 points. They come in at number 11 on my list. Just a really, really good Social Circle team when they were still up in 2A before coming back down to 1A where they sit now. They come in my list at number 11.
They come in my list at number 11 as well. One of the things that was most impressive about the Social Circle team is they had 2 3-timers, 4 2-timers, 2 1-timers on that team. They also had, and this is a fairly rare thing, they had a 4-time placer who never won a state title in Kyle Morris. And that is the type of depth of a team that is pretty impressive to watch.
Completely agree.
All right, Ringgold.
We'll go to Ringgold. 2002 Ringgold at that. Dual champions and traditional champions. They score 235 points. 4 champions, 8 placers. They come in number 16 on my list. A well-rounded Ringgold team at that.
And they are number 10 on my list. 4 champions, 2 runners-up. Ringgold, we're going to get to them and talking a little bit later with our true and false part of it.
Yeah, we'll get there.
But Ringgold in the early 2000s, 2002, solid squad.
Big thing for me, wins the state tournament by 78.5 points.
Yep.
Big thing for me.
All right.
That means they probably had it wrapped up by like the semis.
Buford.
This one was fun for me because I picked the 2017 Buford, a team that I wrestled against. I got to see Stonecheck, Berge, Darricott, Corday on that team before moving to Bay. The level of dominance that they had.
He wasn't on that team.
He wasn't, but I'm talking about wrestling that era of Buford.
Yeah.
2017 team, dual and traditional champions in 5A. They come in number 10 on my list. 5 champions, 10 placers in total. That's where they fell on my list.
So they're number 8 on my list. Buford is. One of the things I think that's most interesting, and you can just look at their squad, right? 4-timer Nikki Stonecheck wrestling at Lock Haven right now, right?
Stud.
3-time state champ Charlie Darricott wrestling at Stanford right now.
Hammer.
2-time Logan Ashton on that squad. He's
Hammer.
wrestling at UTC.
Yep.
And NCAA qualifier Logan Ashton.
Yep.
Berge is wrestling at Princeton. Not only did they do it in high school, they've continued on and wrestling elsewhere.
Yep.
All right. Woodland, where you and I do not agree.
There we go.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say Pope. Go ahead. Go Woodland.
Woodland?
Yeah,
Okay.
go Woodland.
2021 Woodland, dual and traditional champions, 4 champions, 6 placers, 243 points. They win the state tournament by 41 points. They come in number 4 on my list. So again, we could talk about names: Smith, McCrary, Henson, we could name the guys on that team. Big thing for me is the competition they wrestled in that 5A. They had to knock off that Buford team that, while not maybe as star-studded, I would argue nearly as deep. They had to go through a gauntlet that was 5A. This is still before 7A became Camden and Buford, obviously. So to me, this is still in the era of 5A being the toughest class in the state. They win it by 41 points, which is 18% of the top 10, and they do it with only 4 champions.
So that's my issue, right? So Woodland, right, they did have depth. There's no doubt about it. And they had McCrary and Henson and
Smith.
And Smith. And again, we could make the same argument we were just making with 2017. But they were not dominant. They only had 18% of the top 10 points. So you could say the competition was better, but they did not dominate.
No, they didn't.
And to make a top 10 for me, you have to be dominant.
I think dominance matters. I also, again, I'm going to keep saying, I think your competition matters a lot too.
All right. Pope.
This one's a weird one for me because it was tough judging them because of the fact that they were one of the teams that was pretty tough for me to find other results for. They were kind of tricky to find results for, but I eventually got it. They come in, their 2013 team, traditional and dual champions. They come in at number 17 on my list. 5 champions, 9 placers, 215.5 points. What really kind of solidified this being the team I was going to choose, they win the state tournament by 116.5 points.
Right.
And this is a 5A where Collins Hill on the rise, Camden a little bit before, but still putting out good wrestlers. Again, this is 5A when 5A was the classification in Georgia.
And that's why, for me, they're number 6, is because 116.5 points over the runners-up, 26% of the points they garnered, right? They dominated a good group of teams.
Agreed.
Okay? Not like the Woodland team, who you have ranked higher than them.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's move to the last 3 teams. Well, 3 more teams. We have 6 left. 3 more teams. Different years. They are in our top 10. Love it.
Love it for me. The 1999 love it. Thank you, Rocky Kaufman. They were traditional champions in 1999. They come in my list number 8. They put 9 in the finals. 4 champions, 5 runners-up, 11 placers, big point. They scored a quarter of the total points scored in the top 10. The hockey game down below even agrees with my pick.
Yeah, goal. All right. So my pick was the 2000 team. Come in at number 7, 5 champs, 10 placers, and it's already been validated by the Love It people that 2000 was better than 1999. So we'll just move on.
I don't care. Y'all, most of y'all and these people here as well don't agree with what I say anyways. But I'm going to keep talking. That's not going to change.
That's true. All right, let's move on to Archer.
They come in at number 6 on my list. The 2014 Archer team, traditional and duels champions, 5 champions, 3 runners-up, 9 placers, 249 points. They win the state tournament by 65.5 points. Again, we could talk about the teams that were in the mix at that point. Camden, Collins Hill. This is Mountain View as well when they started putting out teams with guys that were there in the mix. As well, a little bit further down the state, you had teams like Colquitt in the mix. A very competitive 6A at this point. And for me, winning it with over a quarter of the points scored in the top 10, that was super important for me. It's that Archer Tigers team that makes my top 10.
So for me, my Archer Tiger team is the 2015 team. Number 4, ranked 235 points. The most impressive thing for me was 29% of the top 10 points they scored. 136.5 points. I called Coach Bugles 2 4-timers, 3 2-timers, and this is what he said. We were ranked as high as number 5 in the country, won KC Stampede, finished 3rd at Power A behind Franklin Regional and Buchanan, and won the state duels 66-3. That's why he picked 2015. Fair.
I'm not disagreeing. As well, winning the Stampede in 2014 as well. So
that's true.
They did that then as well.
All right, Jefferson.
Yep.
Now this was hard for everyone that's out there. Jefferson has long dominated so many different years. And picking a year for Jefferson was exceptionally difficult. You wouldn't say so?
I kind of knew I was going to go with 2016 off the rip. The lineup that they had, but not only that, I'm going to keep saying it, the competition that they dominated. 3A in the middle 2010s was a murderer's row. You had teams like North Hall, Sonoraville in the mix. You had these teams that were producing college-level wrestlers, multiple-time state champions, teams that were in the top 5 multiple years on and on. This Jefferson team, 6 champions, 9 placers in total, 273 points scored. Big thing, they win the state tournament by 154 points. That's what mattered to me most when it came to picking them, and they fall in at number 3 on my list.
All right, so for me, I picked the 2005 team, and they're the number 2 team on my list. And the reason, one of the big reasons was 13 in the state finals, 7 champs, 6 runners-up, 130 points more than the runner-up. They had 2 4-time state champions on their team, 1 3-timer, and 2 2-timers, as well as 5 that would be 1-timers.
Yep.
That is a dominant team. That's why they're number 2 for me.
I think that there was kind of a tier of the top 3 where we kind of knew who the top 3 was going to be, especially when the stats that we compiled together. I feel like that there was a rather distinct top 3.
Well, we have 3 left,
yes,
and one of those that didn't make the top 3 is Camden.
Yeah, Camden County. 2017 is the team I went with. Traditional duels champions, a team that I did go up against. I mean, if we could talk names, guys like Raiden Wilder, 3-time champion. This is the Krug Crew Orem era where trying to beat them down low, you're better off trying to fight Jason with a toothpick. Like, this was arguably one of the most... I was talking about Jason Voorhees, not you.
Oh,
I
okay.
assure
I
you,
was like,
not
I
you.
don't
I
know.
assure you. 7 champions on that Camden team, 10 placers. They score 259 points. They win the state tournament by 134 points. And that's, again, beating the Archer teams of old that we were talking about just a few minutes ago.
And my number 5 team is also that Camden team. I reached out to Coach Wilder. He said probably the 2017. He goes, I'm not 100% sure how you rank a team, right? We went 7 for 7 in the state finals. That was outstanding. They had 10 placers. But he said, you might be able to make an argument because some of the other teams were more complete teams as a whole. So, but we went with 2017. If you had to pick, that's what he picked.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with him there. But again,
right.
it's yeah.
Now we go to our 2 final teams, and you and I disagree.
Yes,
because he's a Collins Hill homer.
Of course I am. And that's going to be the argument. However, you're going to make me say something about that conversation because I know where this conversation is going to go. Bo Flint might try to murder me when I get back to campus, being that he is one of my assistant coaches at Emmanuel.
Go.
Okay, there's going. All right. So, how do you want to do this? Do you want to we could talk about both the teams and then...
All right, so what is your number 1 team?
My number 1 team is the 2010 Collins Hill team, 5A state champions. They win the state tournament by 113 points. They go 6 for 6 in the finals. This is TJ Mitchell, who in his time was a top 3 wins holder in his career in the state of Georgia. Collins Hill's number 1. I took his record from him before. But him, Bazell Partridge, Drew Ferguson, Joel Smith, who'd go on to wrestle at Arizona State. This is in my opinion, this is Coach Ramos's magnum opus. This was his greatest team he ever coached, in my opinion. And that's why that I have them number 1 on my list.
All right, so one of the things that's really interesting is that we have 2 teams that scored more than 300 points at the state tournament.
Only 2 have.
Only 2 have. Collins Hill had 301 points. They're my number 3 ranked team. You've already made a case for why they're your number 1 ranked.
Yep.
My number 1 ranked team is 2016 Commerce. Okay? And the fact that you scored 322 points, 11 champions, 14 finalists, 213 points in front of everyone else, in front of the second place team, 33%, they dominate. Now,
Agreed.
I do agree with your criticism that's coming.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll just say it blatantly.
Okay.
This is a 1A in 2016. This is not your 1A that we wrestle in today where it's a murderer's row of Social Circle, Pisgah, Commerce, Tryon. This is a Tryon team that didn't bring 14 to the state tournament. This is GAC, Wesleyan would have a kid or 2. Again, competition matters to me. And I look at that Commerce team. The Flints are some of my closest friends. I love the Flints. Owen Brown, I love that dude. I love a lot of people from Commerce. Amy Flint did my senior pictures, for God's sakes. But I can't look at that team in the same light as I do a Collins Hill team that would beat a Pope that had Brooks Clemens, a Buford team that still had Ness and Barber in the crew, a team that would go on to wrestle Blair at the Final Four duels, lose to him by 5 points, and have great showings at tournaments like Super 32, Beast of the East, Powerade. Again, I could go on and on.
Yeah.
That's why that Collins Hill team is, in my opinion, the greatest team to ever wrestle in high school in Georgia.
All right.
Correct.
What?
Correct. It is.
All right. So,
and yes, I am a Collins Hill homer. I really don't care.
We do not care what Rocky says anyway. So, all right. So that wraps up the top 25. And honestly, look, making comparisons of teams over time, it's not easy to pick. You can get numbers, right? You could talk about it. My argument as it relates to that is that some of those teams didn't have the opportunity to go and wrestle at this place or that place or against these teams, right? It was not common in the 1980s to go and travel all over the place and wrestle against those teams. So that's the thing that I think you have to keep in mind.
Oh, I don't disagree with you there. I think for sure teams that, let's say, late 90s and before for sure have a bit of a handicap to them. But once you hit the 2000s and even as far as 2015, 2010s, we're seeing teams travel to Don Bosco in California.
Yeah.
We see teams.
No, well, Doc
Buchanan. I don't know why I said
Doc
Doc.
B.
My bad. Go to Doc B. Go to Beast. Go to Powerade. We see these teams doing that from Georgia. So I not to say I don't necessarily see the validity in that argument, but I don't see it as pertinent when we get to those later years.
All right. So if you disagree with Lucas, you know where to find him. If you disagree with me, don't let me know. I don't really want to know.
If you don't agree with Jason Fulmore, I will give you his email address, and my email address is sewrestle@gmail.com.
All right. All right, so that's top 25. We're going to take a break, grab a little bit of a drink and that sort of thing. We're going to come back and discuss eight issues for this year. It'll only be about 20 minutes. We're going to do this lightning quick in the next round.
Works for me.
All right, man. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we're back. Nice little break. That was the top 25. We're now going to do a rapid-fire true and false for this year in the state of Georgia. Classifications, all 8 classifications.
Yep.
All right? And
Well,
Rocky is
7 in girls.
7 in girls.
Yeah, made that
So Rocky's going to read us a true false for each one. The idea of this is very simple. He's going to take one side, he's going to say true or false. I have to take the other side, whether I believe it or I don't. All right? Okay?
Start?
Yep.
Central Carroll are now the favorites in 4A, will win both duels and traditional.
You want me in?
You true or false?
I'll go true. I think Lovett has had an exodus in this offseason through, graduation, the GHSA transfer portal in full bloom. It really looks like Central Carroll will be the team this year in 4A. And I think that there's a host of teams behind them. We look at a Chestatee as well, I think in the mix, Sonarville, Troop on the rise. But I do think if we have to pick one, I think it would be the Lions of Central Carroll.
So you say true to that?
True, yes, true.
All right, so I have to take false to that. And
Good luck.
Well, I do believe that Central Carroll probably is the favorites. I'll give you a reason why they may not win 4A. And that is, from top to bottom, they are a talented team. But last year, traditional, they did not wrestle their best.
Yeah.
And if a team is going to come through, and chip away, True, or Love It, or different groups, chip away at them and take away their places.
Whoever wins 4A, if it's not going to be Central Carroll, they're going to need the help of the other teams. For
Agreed,
sure.
100%. Next question.
This is girls. Carrollton takes both duels and traditional.
All right, I go first,
Yep.
and I'm going to say false. And the false to that is this. The girls are evolving tremendously. The level of teams, the level of competition is changed year to year to year. Carrollton has got a solid squad. I 100% agree that they are probably walking in as the favorites. But if I were to say, I think that there's an opportunity, a really legitimate opportunity, someone will knock them off in one of the two sides.
For sure.
Or one of the two.
I will go false here.
No, you have to take true.
Oh, I thought I said
You have to take
no,
true.
I thought you said no. I'm gonna go with true here, and I actually I do think that there is an argument for true here, as the one thing about this Carrollton team, they didn't necessarily graduate a lot. You still have the Moore sisters, you still have Madison Cooley. Watch out for Sierra Lopes. I really like what I saw her this offseason. She wrestled with me. Gabby Carnes, Kate, I could go on and on with their team. However, they made the decision to give the entire state some bulletin board material this weekend.
Yes, they
so
did.
all I know is this. I'll be at the Greenbrier Women's Wolfpack Invitational this season because I want to see that go down.
Yeah, no doubt.
Girls this year for sure might be the most intriguing classification in all of GHSA this year.
Yeah, well,
Very
and,
well
and
could
that's
be.
the reason I took true, because I think that there's a lot of moving pieces and you never know what's going to happen. Next.
Rockmart continues to roll. Claims both duels and traditional.
So I'm going to go true here. I do think Rockmart does still come in the heavy favorites in 2A. I don't think they're as heavy of favorites as they were last year. Graduating guys like TK Davis, it's for sure going to hurt them. But I still think 2A, I mean, if you look at my rankings, Vidalia, Toombs, Franklin County in the mix, but I feel like it's the same thing with Central Carroll. If someone's going to beat them, it's going to be in traditional, and someone's going to have to chip away at them.
All right, so I take Faults, and the reason I take Faults is because of the graduation. They graduated a ton, and if they are going to return and repeat as champions, they're going to really have to get some unknown kids to step up and make the podium when, they've been sitting behind a TK Davis, right? So I think a team that you might want to watch is Toombs.
I don't disagree with that. They also graduate guys like Morris and Watts.
They graduate, but they only graduated 2.
And those were their 2 state finals.
And that was their 2 state finals. Next.
I got to worry about the guy next to me slapping me on this question. 1A. Someone besides Social Circle or Pisgah wins duels or traditional.
False.
All right, you go.
No one is winning 1A but either Pisgah or Social Circle. I guarantee it. I don't have to say anything more.
I would.
One of those 2 teams are going to win.
All right.
That is false.
All right, all right, so if I have to go true here, which I will, while I would agree with you, I actually don't think there's a scenario when you look at the way the weights break down in 1A and who's at each weight. I could see if a very, very specific set of circumstances come about, I could see Tryon making a run. I could see it. They need some help across the entire class. There would need to be some odd circumstances that come about, but I don't think it's necessarily an impossibility. However, for sure, unlikely to say the least.
Next question.
5A. Ola will surprise and win either duel or traditional.
True. I think they will. I think there's going to be one that they do get. When you look at Cass with question marks, Jefferson with question marks, 5A, Wallace Super Deep class, I don't think there's a team currently speaking with the questions that we have as solid through 14 weights as Ola in 5A. If Jefferson doesn't have Sammy Brown, which everything I hear is that he's never stepping on a wrestling mat again. Cass without Jake Craps. That's a tongue twister. I feel like that hurts them big. Both those, you're losing 28 points basically in traditional.
So I'm gonna go true. Well, I'm gonna go false. Sorry,
yeah.
I'm gonna go false.
Watch it.
Because I believe Jefferson is the team to beat. They are going to have Sammy Brown this year, and Davis Dendy coming back and competing. Jefferson is gonna roll. Next.
No shot.
7A. Buford will knock off Camden in either duel or traditional.
Don't do it to me. Don't do it to me. Don't do it to me.
Do it to him.
True. Buford will win one of the 2 duels or traditional.
Okay, you're gonna make me defend Camden here.
I'm
right?
gonna make you defend Camden.
I don't like you. I mean,
that's okay. We'll get over it.
I mean, if I have to go with, I guess the answer would be false here on my end, right?
Yep.
Camden County is going to still roll 7A. And they're going to do it the same way they've done it for seemingly the past 10 years into infinitum, which is they're going to find kids that you've never heard of. They're going to put 14 in the tournament. They're going to place 10. They're going to have 4 champions. And they're going to do this basically until the sun eats the earth. And I'm still never going to pick them. And I'm still picking Buford. I don't care. I don't care.
It was impressive last year that they brought 14 and put 14 on the podium.
I said it was going to happen. I called it.
That is impressive.
That's what they do, and that's what they're going to continue to do.
Is there any more?
Yeah, 2 more.
2 more.
Oh, yeah, because there's 2
3A.
classes left. Jeez.
3A.
As many as 5 different teams could claim the title and duel and traditional. By the way, I didn't write all those ands. That was someone.
That was me.
And duel and traditional will not be the same.
Okay.
Okay.
Get that? You got it.
All right. So 5 different teams could be in the hunt,
Yep.
right? In 3A. And duels and traditional will not be the same. And
True.
that is okay. You're gonna take true.
I have true for both aspects of that question.
Okay.
At this point, for me trying to pick 3A, I'm throwing darts at a dartboard and the lights are off. I don't know what's going to happen in 3A. This is the first time where when we've done any of our predictions, I could have at least somewhat of an idea. To put in perspective, this is the closest my rankings have ever been in one classification, to the point where 15 teams are within 2 points of number one. That doesn't happen, and I don't see a possibility. It really is Ringo. Like, we could name the teams, we'd be naming them for a couple of minutes.
Right.
It really is anybody. It's any horse race in 3A.
All right,
this year.
so I think that I have to take faults, right?
Yep. Good luck.
All right, and I think that Ringgold is going to be the team to beat in 3A. I do think that there is a lot of moving parts.
Yep.
But I think ultimately it will come down to a 2-team race, not 5-team race.
Okay, but I can't disagree with you.
6A, a different team will win dual and traditional.
You first here.
Me first, and I will say true. Woodward Academy returns a lot, gets Christian Bell from Lovett, and they are a solid squad. But last year we saw South Effingham, we saw North Forsyth, we saw other teams in the mix. 6A duels, always chaotic. I would never put money on the fact that we're gonna have the same team.
So if I have to take true that we're gonna have that the same team's gonna win, I think Woodward is the easy choice, and I think that there's reason for it. They return a lot. You're now adding a top 2 heavyweight in the state of Georgia, a guy that could go wrestle Division I if he wants at the heavyweight weight class. You have a culture of winning there. The biggest question mark to me, and this is with any team, when you change a head coach, especially one that was as important to a program as Jeff Reagan, do you get the same production out of your squad? And that's not a shot at the new staff in at Woodward.
Right.
Obviously, it's a
Right,
more
but you make a transition.
especially when you're transitioning from a guy like Jeff Reagan.
Yeah.
I think that there is question marks there, but again, I actually don't necessarily disagree with this intrinsically that we will see Woodward take both duals and traditional.
All right. Any questions from you all before we wrap this up? Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. You guys have a good one. Take care.